Hello, this is Mr. Kays, and today we're looking at 17.4. 17.4, the Reformation is going to continue. Now, the biggie in the Reformation is going to be Martin Luther, but that is not the only dude we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a Frenchman by the name of John Calvin. In 1536, he writes a book called The Institutes of the Christian Religion. And in it, Calvin states that humans were sinful by nature and couldn't earn salvation. Well, that was nothing earth-shaking, but he talks about concepts called predestination, in which God knows who will be saved and who will be damned. And before he even created man, he had what was called the elect, people who he had selected to be saved and those that would not be saved. Calvinism is just the religion based on his teachings. So it's a denomination of Christianity, Protestantism. Calvin was not well liked in France, and so at the point of death, he had to leave France. He is invited to go next door to the country of Switzerland, and in the city of Geneva, he's invited to set up a model community, religious community. He believed that the ideal government was a theocracy, and you can put down that it's a government controlled by religious leaders. Now, he and his followers ran Geneva according to these rules. All people attend religious classes. That's in addition to Sunday church services. All people attend religious classes. There was to be no bright clothing worn. Black and white was acceptable, nothing else. There was to be no card playing and no heresy or going against church doctrine, because if you did, ultimately you'd be asked to leave or you would be burned at the stake. So he ran a very sober community. Now, people came from all over Europe to observe this model community. One such person was John Knox. Now, John was a follower of Calvin, who was a Scotsman, and he took Calvin's ideas back to Scotland to form the Presbyterian Church. Presbyterians are elders or presbyters of the church, Presbyter. So if you look at Presbyterianism, it's nothing more than Scottish Calvinism, from France all the way to Scotland. Now, in France, Calvin's followers were called Huguenots, Huguenots. The Huguenots were a decent number of people, and I found this out. The nobles of France converted to become Huguenots because they really didn't want to pay tithes or taxes to the Church of Rome, and they found this as a way of breaking away. Well, things aren't great in France for the Huguenots, because in 1572, at the Catholic feast of St. Bartholomew's, we have a great slaughter of Huguenots. 12,000 of them died in riots between Catholics and themselves, and this is in the city of Paris. So this gives you an idea that you're not seeing religious unity at all. In fact, you're seeing all these awful fights and riots over religion. And of course, you can figure out probably the hottest wars are over faith or religion. Okay, other reformers included the Anabaptists. The Protestants taught that the Bible was the source of all truth and that everybody should read and study it. Well, the Anabaptists were of a belief that only adults should be baptized. It was the practice of... Please come to the office. It was the Anabaptists who were of a belief that only adults should be baptized. It was a practice back then that babies should be baptized, so that would guarantee that they would go to heaven if they died. Well, the Anabaptists believed that adults were the only ones to be able to understand the rite of baptism and what that meant, and so that's what they held to. They also held to the separation of church and state. They didn't believe that the kingdom should have an official church. So the Anabaptists are going to survive and became the forerunners of the Mennonites and the Amish that we see down in eastern Pennsylvania today. They also are going to influence the Quakers, which are down in East Pennsylvania too, around Philadelphia, and the Baptists that we know today. Women of the Reformation. They play key roles in the early Reformation. Many of these women played behind the scenes roles for their husband. Now, one of the most famous was Katharina von Bora. Katherina. It looks like Katharina, but Katharina, small v-o-n, capital B-o-r-a. She was a former nun, Catholic nun, who left the Catholic Church, married Martin Luther, and they had a very happy marriage. She and Martin had 6 children, and their marriage was a model for others to follow about happy married life. Now, do you think the Catholics are going to just stand there and watch thousands of the faithful fall away to Protestantism? We have what's called the Catholic Reformation. Sometimes it's called the Counter-Reformation. Counter means against. The Catholic Reformation was a reform movement. Millions remained loyal to the Catholic Church. One of the most important reformers for the Catholics was Ignatius of Loyola. He was a Spanish man who wrote a book called Spiritual Exercises, which laid out a day-to-day plan of meditation, prayer, and study. It was a very useful devotion book for Catholics to help them remain faithful to the Catholic Church. Now, his group is going to be recognized by the Pope. His followers were called the Jesuits, or the Society of Jesus. In 1540, the Pope made this group a religious order. So they're a group of priests that are going to be focused on a couple things. Founding of schools, which means the study of classics and theology, sending out missionaries to convert people to Catholicism, and hopefully stopping Protestantism from spreading. And in their zealousness, their eagerness, they were quite successful in keeping southern Germany and Poland with Catholicism. Northern Germany went to Protestantism, but southern Germany was Catholic. Now, reforming popes included Pope Paul II, and he did quite a few things to help reform the church. He investigated indulgences. He approved the Jesuit order. He's going to use the Inquisition to stop heresy. That's a church court, and they could burn people at the stake or torture them until they confess their sins. And then he called for a group called the Council of Trent. The Council of Trent. And there in 1545, this Catholic group reaffirmed the power of the Catholic Church. They investigated indulgences and found that it was valid for indulgences to exist. And they also reaffirmed that the power of the Church, or the word of the Church, was final. Well, as we see the Protestant Reformation and the Counter-Reformation, we see the legacy of this movement. Well, we see a big one. Religion no longer unites Europe. It used to be Roman Catholicism. Now you have a split. In addition, reformers' successful revolt against the church authority laid a groundwork for rejecting Christianity altogether by later generations of Europeans. We're seeing a movement towards doing away with the authority of the church and then later on the king. How dare they break away from the church? How dare they break away from the king? Well, you're going to see it's easier and easier if one step is taken before the next. This is Mr. K's, and 17.4 is in the books. Bye-bye.